This week's Irish Farmers Journal podcast is brought to you by MartBids, your new free-to-download app providing farmers with the details of every animal before it enters the sales ring. MartBids. Trade smarter. Trade safer.
Hello and welcome to this week's podcast. I'm Thomas Hubert, news correspondent with the Irish Farmers Journal. Coming up on the show this week.
This has always been the case, that there's a ceiling on the maximum relief available. And it's something, in fact, that I've spoken previously with the Commissioner and his Cabinet about, is to see in the context of the next cap, can that be increased? But it's not an imposition that the state is making. This is a cap that has always been there.
The limit imposed on tax reliefs that young farmers can claim in the budget is not new, according to Minister Creed. And
the usual plan is to maybe try to close off about 20% of the ground every month from November on. So we'd have 20% closed at the end of November and 20% in December, and we'd finish then, and we'd have everything out by December.
Getting a sheep farm ready for the winter, we talk grazing, feeding and soil fertility. But first, over 95% of shareholders in both Lakeland and Lackpatrick have voted in favour of merging their co-ops. The Irish Farmers Journal's Northern Ireland editor, David Wright, was at the Lakeland Special General Meeting in Cavan on Tuesday, and he got the first reaction from the chief executive of the substantially enlarged Lakeland dairies, Michael Hanley.
Yeah, a very strong turnout, number one, and then a very, very strong mandate, very strong vote in favour of all three resolutions. So look, it's a great day for dairy farmers, for all the dairy farmers and shareholders of both Lackpatrick and Lakeland dairies. The merger has been agreed and with a very, very strong mandate. And what the farmers have said is, drive ahead now with the business. It's a 1.8 billion litre business. It has scale, it has technology, it has routes to market, and it has customers in 90 countries all over the world. So there's a great opportunity for farmers, a great opportunity for milk suppliers, and the merged entity has the opportunity now to be a large, efficient, customer-based, customer-focused dairy co-op processing milk on behalf of its suppliers in Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, actually in the northern half of the country. It's well geared now for Brexit, regardless how Brexit pans out. It has facilities both sides of the border. It has facilities in the UK, facilities in the EU, non-EU and third countries. So it's very well geared to handle whatever Brexit throws at the business going forward.
Yes, and I suppose just looking forward, the immediate future, Michael. What's the next process? You've still got a competition issue to get through. Is it then a matter of sitting down and looking at the whole business and seeing where you can drive efficiency, or what's the next process? Yeah, well,
the issue is the competition authorities in Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, and we're confident that there won't be any issues there, and then from a banking point of view as well. But we are confident that the merger now is. The competition authorities will come back in the early part of the new year to approve that. So what's the future? The future now is, there are challenges in the business, and not all parts of the business are profit making. So what we have to do now is plan accordingly, right size the business, and farmers milk cows 365 days a year. They're entitled to get a competitive milk price, and what we have said is we will pay a competitive milk price. So to do that, we have to be efficient. So we have to run the businesses as efficiently as we do, and we have a strategy in Lakeland of sweating the assets, and that's what we intend to do with this business.
Okay, Michael, look, wish you all the very best with the new business going forward. So thank you very much for your time.
David.
The SIAL trade show is taking place in Paris this week. That's the largest event in the food industry in the world. Irish Farmers Journal news correspondent Odile Evans sent this report from France.
Hello, this is Odile Evans reporting from SIAL in Paris, the world's largest business-to-business food fair. This year there were 7,200 exhibitors from over 110 countries, along with 160,000 trade visitors. Products are presented by category in 8 different halls. Exhibitors on the Board Bia stand included 16 Irish meat companies, 4 Irish dairy and dairy ingredient companies, 7 prepared food manufacturers and 5 confectionery food companies. ABP and Dawn Meat Group had their own independent exhibitions, and the ABP one was listed in the top 10. Here's Tara McCarthy, CEO of Bord Bia, at the Origin Green stand in the meat hall.
Ireland's beef sector is also hugely challenged by Brexit. 50% of our exports presently arrive into the UK. And what we're now looking to do, and we have been trying to do for the last 6-7 years, is look at platforms for diversification and differentiation. So we're not looking to sell commodity beef throughout the world. You'll see that this is a very intensely competitive market, and there are many people with very similar propositions. You'll see the likes of Uruguay at SIAL, you'll see the likes of Brazil, but there is no country in the world that has a national platform with Origin Green. And that's one of the key points of difference that Ireland has, and it looks to capture the value that that creates. And what we're talking about is audits on every single farm.
There was a busload of farmers from Dairygold over to visit the show, and I caught up with them in the dairy hall. Here's Barry O'Connor from Youghal with his impression of the show.
Well, it's mind-blowing, the volume of business being done here and the number of companies that are showing their wares here. And also, as you walk around, you realise that there's an awful lot of people here buying, and there's a lot to play for, and it's certainly the place for our companies to be showing what we have to offer and to put our best foot forward. And I think it's encouraging to see the atmosphere and the vitality of the place here today to give you a bit of encouragement going home that people want our products, definitely.
Ireland's kind of put its best foot forward in that sense.
I think so, and we need to probably do it more. We need to probably put more into it, because there's some very big resources being put into other country stands here as well. We'll need to be able to match that, I think, going forward, and put our best case forward for why we've got the best product, best green, sustainable product that's in the world, and we need to sell that, all the time, and because other people here today are certainly jumping on the same bandwagon, but they don't have the same strong case that we have to do it. And I think that we need to be able to stay out there in front and be able to defend what we have and be proud of it.
Negotiations between the EU and Mercosur have stalled while Brazil holds its general elections. And while China accounts for approximately half of their beef exports, they are keen to take advantage of increased access to the European market. Brazil, Uruguay, Paraguay and Argentina all had strong presence at SIAL. Esteban El Barriso is the vice president of Argentinian beef processor Frigorífico Garino. He told me about his company.
So you have a factory in Argentina, and it's, you say, killing over 1,000 cattle a day. And is your business mostly export?
80% export, 20% domestic market.
And what's your kind of main international markets?
Pardon?
Where are your international markets? What are the key countries you go to?
China, Russia, Chile, Israel, European Union, comes in Brazil and other countries. At the moment, Argentina is very competitive.
Yeah. And your typical beef farmer in Argentina, how many cows will you have?
Average is about between 500 and 800
wow.
per farmer. That's more or less the idea of size.
Big. Yes.
That's average.
Yeah.
There's big ones, this is average, and there are small ones what are particularly specialized in some productions. That's what happened today.
Okay. So in terms of size, the UK market is a big one, a little one for you guys. How important would it be? Because China is very big.
China is very big. For us, for Argentina, it's almost 40% of beef export.
Now, you've just heard how important China is to South American beef exporters. Closer to home, the Netherlands has just gained permission to export veal to China, and that's important to Irish farmers because Dutch veal finishers buy a lot of our calves. At SIAL, Odile met Hennis Winkels of the Dutch veal processor Van Drie.
I think it will be a very important market for us because on the world market we are on every place we are with our product, and we couldn't deliver China because of the BSE in the past, and now we can start now and to learn the people in China what is the good things and how to prepare veal meat. Also, I think it will be a very important market for the European veal producers.
And Chinese consumers are not necessarily familiar with veal as a product, so how do you plan to market it?
I think we start with the cooks. There are a lot of cooks in China who have studied in Europe and they know the product in the restaurants. There are also supermarket chains where are European people in charge. They know the product also. And then the third thing we do is to start with learning all the young people, the cooks, also young people, how to prepare the product. Also, that is the three pillars where we start with.
And what is the volume? Is there a limit on the volume that you can ship to China?
Nah, that's not so easy to say what exactly the volume will be. We can deliver a lot.
Okay.
We can deliver a lot.
There's no limit.
There's the first 5 to 10 years. There is no limit.
Okay, and at the moment it's just for Dutch veal, and you can't. So, because a lot of Irish calves obviously go to your country.
Yes, it is. At this moment, it's only calf born in the Netherlands.
Yep.
And now I start with to try to find calves born also in Ireland and Germany, because that are the two biggest countries in our company where we buy little calves.
And how many calves do you know roughly, and what volume is from Ireland that you manufacture?
That's more or less 50 or 60,000 we have from Ireland.
Okay, it's a large amount.
Yes, it's a large amount.
Okay, perfect. And how would that compare to how many are from, say, Germany?
Germany delivers 450,000. Also more or less 6 times.
Yeah, but for Ireland, we're a small country. It means a lot.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But we like your calves because they are very healthy animals, and your farmers are professionals how to reach the little calves. So I'm very happy with your company.
Dutch veal exporter Henley Svinkels there, ending Odil's reporting from SIAL. And to conclude on international trade, let's hear from Minister for Agriculture Michael Creed, who is flying to Malaysia and Indonesia this Saturday. My colleague Tommy Moyles asked him about this trade mission and about new tax rules causing a lot of confusion for young farmers.
We hope to sell more there, put it simply. In food-wise, it identified that region of the globe as, emerging middle classes, more disposable income, and kind of looking westwards for their dietary habits. So our offering, in the context of everything we export, is on the table.
That's right through from dairy through to seafood, I'd imagine.
Seafood, pork, even the drinks industry. If you're conscious of, pork offerings in Muslim countries, but
yes.
There are opportunities there as well.
Mm-hmm. What size mission have you got going over?
A substantial mission. I haven't the exact numbers now of the industry they're going, but in all of these things they're built around the ambition of the industry, really. Culturally, like what's not probably widely understood is that in a lot of those countries, if it doesn't happen at a political level first, it doesn't happen, the doors aren't open at a business-to-business level. So, I going on the mission and then obviously a big trade delegation behind is a real opportunity for them to build their contacts, and these are new and emerging markets for us.
I suppose closer to home, last time we met we spoke about generational renewal in the context of CAP. I suppose what's come out with the young trained farmer tax reliefs have caused a bit of a stir in certain elements within the farming sector. What's your take on it so far?
The inference appears to be in some of the commentary that this is an imposition that the state is putting on. It's not. This has always been the case, that there's a ceiling on the maximum relief available. And it's something, in fact, that I've spoken previously with the Commissioner and his Cabinet about, is to see in the context of the next cap, can that be increased? But it's not an imposition that the state is making. This is a cap that has always been there.
What sort of reaction are you getting?
Well, obviously, I suppose it's the first time that farmers have seen it in black and white, and it causes concern. And I've spoken to the President of Macra, for example, obviously would be, somebody who's been in direct contact with me on the matter. But it's not our gift to raise it. So it's something that we need to prosecute with the European Union level for those who it will impact on.
Is there any more details coming out of it? For example, is it going to be a retrospective tax put on we'll say farmers that would have got it in the last 12 to 18 months, or will it?
Well, I haven't any
indication. details aren't out yet.
Though that, that cap has applied for many years, that level of cap. But I haven't any indication that that's the case. That they're going to start doing a search of everybody retrospectively. Thanks,
Minister Creed there. Now, another thing that makes farmers angry is the level of disruption on farms along the site of the new M11 motorway extension in County Wexford. There have been disputes over drainage, access and safety between landowners and construction companies for several months now. Things came to a head in the past week, with farmers blocking the site with machinery at 3 different locations. Irish Farmers Journal news correspondent Pat O'Toole spoke with one of them, Norman Kearney.
We're in a right way on down my land to my underpass and through on the other side. The surface is a tarmac and it's not suitable for horses to walk on. I have told them, I've sent Francis Fannin, who's represented me, has sent in emails after emails after emails that it's highly dangerous. I have stopped my horses, I've stopped the people in the yard riding the horse down through, for the simple reason that I brought one horse in on one day and he lost his feet and went down. And I said, and we can't afford to take that chance with our livery yard, that someone go down on the horse falls and fall on the person maybe, and the two of them are injured and come and claim off us. That's the end of our business, that's the end of our farm to pay them. And as it is now, it's 23rd of October and there's nothing done. I've got the promises that it will be done, but I've no promise of when that day would be, which is not good enough.
It seems that that's the biggest issue farmers have, that everything's been long-fingered. At this stage, do you think the promises could well be empty promises? Do you believe there's a possibility it'll never happen?
I believe at the minute, I have no other way of thinking at the minute, that because I've got so many empty promises, that it is empty promises the whole time. Plus to that, I've got one 3-corner bit of a field left. I got a temporary access put into that to get into it, which was a load of stone levelled out with a digger and left it there. When I asked the contractor when it was going to be finished and done proper and right, he said no, he says that's the finished job now. So where do you go from there? That's not acceptable either. If you drive in with a tractor, you're liable to turn over, the ground will give away, so that's not acceptable either.
This was Norman Kearney with Pat O'Toole. Stay tuned. After this break, we're talking sheep.
Shareholders back Lakeland Patrick co-op merger. In this week's Irish Farmers Journal, we reveal how over 95% of shareholders voted in favour of the co-op merger. Farmers facing €5,000 water fine. TB levels going the wrong way with several new outbreaks in Monaghan. Farmers block motorway works. EU set to cut fertiliser tax. And in this week's Focus supplement, we reveal how efficiency is critical to margins in the poultry and pig meat production sectors. Inside this week's Irish Farmers Journal, on sale today.
Irish Farmers Journal news correspondent Barry Cassidy was at Farm Woke visiting Padder Kearney, who participates in the Better Farm Sheep programme. Padder has 300 ewes in County Louth, and he told Barry about the changes on his farm in recent years.
Well, I suppose in the last 5 years we've made a lot of improvements, but it's taken time. Mainly the fencing, all the fencing we've done over the last 5 years, putting paddocks in. We started with 7, we increased to 14 and now we're 24. So it's made a big difference in the grassland management and the performance of the ewes.
And I suppose then that grassland management, what exactly are you talking about there? What do these paddocks allow you to do?
Well, it gives you the option to know what you're at. Like, I measure the grass every week and I put it in pasture bits, and that gives us the option of knowing when to take paddocks out, how to graze them and what paddocks are performing. So if you know that, it gives you a great insight into what way your farm is utilising the grass.
And I guess just looking ahead here now, we're into autumn, so I suppose you're looking at closing the farm now. What's the plan between now and maybe December?
Well, the usual plan is to maybe try to close off about 20% of the ground every month from November on. So we'd have 20% closed at the end of November and 20% in December, and we'd finish then, and we'd have everything out by December.
And then, so the sheep then, where will they go? What will happen to them between now and lambing?
Well, we're very lucky that we are able to put all the sheep into stubble ground from a neighbour, and that means it frees off the ground so the grass can grow when they're off, and about 6 weeks before they start lambing we put them into the shed to feed them and get them ready for lambing.
and everyone will know it's been a tough year for farmers so far in terms of grass. But you know yourself, you've had a tough year here. Can you maybe just walk us through how things have gone coming out of the summer through this? How are things?
Well, the stamp from the winter on spring was very difficult, and it meant we had to feed more concentrates. We fed up to the 4th or the 12th of April, which is more expensive. So then the grass came, and we thought we were out of the woods till June came and the drought came, and it was really awful bad round here in this land especially. It meant for 6 weeks we had to feed ewes and lambs on concentrates, and the cost of that is very high. But since maybe the end of August, grass growth has recovered a good lot, and we got about 80% of our fodder requirements made now.
I know you've said it coming around on the walk here, but just maybe for those who weren't here, the grass measurement was valuable to you this year as it was in any other year.
I found it nearly more valuable because it gives us an insight. In the 1st of June, we realised we were in big trouble when we were measuring the grass. There was no growth, and the paddocks that we had earmarked that we might cut silage of wasn't going to be cut, so we had to draw up a plan straight away. We weaned early, we kept the ewes confined into certain paddocks and just fed them concentrates, and meant that grass coming behind, if it did come, would be there for the lambs.
And then just here on the last board we mentioned that there is a bit of a fodder deficit, but as you said again, you've planned early, you've made early preparations to cover that.
Yeah, well, we're lucky enough. We realised after we cut the 25th of May and we made 100 bales, but we realised after that we weren't going to make enough silage, so I got in contact with a local contractor and I sort of asked him to keep 50 bales for me. So we have 50 bales off him, and we've made another 60 in September, so we're just on target hopefully.
Sheep farmer Peter Carney there. For more advice, Barry turned to Michael Gottstein, the head of sheep knowledge transfer at Teagasc.
Points for farmers really are, from a soil fertility point of view, first is to kind of know where their soil is at. So if they have done soil samples, which lots of farmers have done for GLAS or various other schemes, it's about basically taking out those results and having a look at them and acting on them. If you haven't got soil samples taken recently in the last year or two, then basically it's about looking at taking new samples, and then when the results come back, the first thing really that we're looking at doing is correcting the soil pH. That's the most important step, because if your soil pH is suboptimum, a lot of the nutrients that are applied on the soil, your phosphorus in particular, is locked up. And your nitrogen isn't used efficiently either. So the first step is to correct the soil pH by spreading lime. And once you have the lime spread, then you look at basically correcting your phosphorus and your potassium levels. So they're your P and your K levels, trying to get them up to soil index 3 for highly stocked farms. If you're moderately stocked or lowly stocked, probably a high soil index 2 is probably adequate.
Okay, so I suppose we're past the chemical fertiliser date now, but there's still things farmers can do in terms.
There's no close period for lime. You can spread lime any day of the year. I suppose the limiting factor in terms of spreading lime is whether the ground is trafficable, okay, so that you can travel it with a lime spreader. And okay, you don't want to spread lime on ground that you're going to be taking silage cuts off of because of the risk of the lime coming. That's not an issue for us at this time of the year. The close period applies only to nitrogen and phosphorus, so you can spread your potassium, and now is a good time to spread potassium on farms where they are low in K. So if you have a significant K deficit on parts of your farm and you've identified that through a soil sample, you have corrected your soil pH, then now is a good time to go and put out muriate of potash. That's 0,050, so 0 nitrogen, 0 phosphorus and 50 K. And you can apply that now. It will be taken up in the soil and held in the soil, available for plant growth in the spring and throughout the summer, and it reduces the risk of luxury uptake of potassium in the springtime, which is one of the triggers for grass tetany in lactating cows and sheep. So for your slurries and your farmyard manures, the closing date is the end of this month, the end of October. So target those on fields that are low in P and K. Target those on fields that you have taken the silage from, because it's important that you recycle those nutrients back into the silage ground. Otherwise, they'll get very poor as well on those indexes.
Now, you've heard Michael Godstein insist on the importance of soil health with Barry there. For more on this, let's join our Northern Ireland correspondent Peter McCann, who spoke with Professor Jane Rickson from the Cranfield Institute.
Jane is a soil scientist. So, Jane, there's been a lot of talk recently, particularly in the UK, about soil health, and that's one of the public goods that even DEFRA Secretary Michael Gove has been keen to talk about. So, what is soil health? Is it easy to define, and then is it easy for a farmer to improve it?
No, soil health is really, really difficult to define, and this is one of the issues that we have trying to implement the environment plan that talks about soil health. There must be hundreds of indicators of soil health, and what we need to do is find ones that farmers can use that are meaningful, i.e. that if you get a change in those indicators, it means something in terms of crop production or water retention or storing carbon. And I think if you had to, it's a bit like if you're on a desert island, you're only allowed to take a certain number of soil health indicators. Our research suggests it's things like organic matter or organic carbon in the soil. It's the nutrient level, it's the structure of the soil, it's the amount of water and air that the soil has, and then it's the soil biology. And those 5 are all interconnected. And if you lose one of those, then that has knock-on effects for all of them. But the issue we have as soil scientists is that even if we can have that shorthand of what is soil health, those 5 indicators, how do we measure them? And even if we know how to measure them, how a change in each of those will affect things like the goods and services that we get from soil, such as crop production and water retention. So it's a really challenging time for soils and soil scientists as to what those metrics of soil health are and what can we do about them.
And I suppose when you talk about soil erosion and that, just being myself, I'm a livestock farmer from Northern Ireland, so it's all grassland on my farm. Perhaps livestock farmers might think it's not really something that applies to them as much. It is more in the tillage end of things. Is it soil erosion problems, or is there still problems in grassland too, even in this part of the world?
Well, it's really interesting that you asked that question, because lots of people assume that grass means that you have no erosion. But what we're finding, there is evidence to suggest that even grasslands can lose a lot of soil, and a lot of that is because of compaction. That we're compacting our soils. We've got high stocking capacity, high stocking rates, which means that we're actually puddling and compacting the soil so that when the rain does come, we might have damaged the vegetation cover a bit, but we've certainly compacted the soil so it can't receive that rainfall and infiltrate that rainfall, so it starts to run off. And again, if we've damaged the vegetation structure in any way, it might start to take soil. So there is some work that actually suggests even landscapes like grassland can lose soil and certainly run off, and that leads to flooding downstream, which can be a big problem.
And just the last thing about soil compaction, I suppose there is a bit of a debate that goes on in Northern Ireland, even in this last few years, about mechanical loosening of soil, so use of subsoilers, aerators and that. Now, the last summer past there has been, by all accounts, the best summer in 50 years, really, for opening up soil. What does the science say about mechanical loosening in the soil? Is it something that actually does work, or has long-term benefits?
I think it's one of these things that timing is everything. So when you carry out those operations, so I would argue, first of all, try and avoid compaction in the first place. Prevention is better than cure. But if you do find that you've got really tight, compacted soils, then you may have to go in with a subsoiler. But then it's really important as to when you go in. If you go in when the soils are still wet, you'll just cause smearing, which causes even more problems than if you hadn't gone in at all. So that's best to leave that. Leave it as long as possible so you've got dry conditions, so that you'll break up that soil structure, get some of those fissures, some of those cracks in the soil, which will then, with the next rainfall event, will take that water in. So timing is everything, and also things like soil type. If you've got a lot of clayey soils, then again this smearing effect can be a problem. And even on light soils, on sandier soils, what we're finding is that subsoiling can certainly relieve some of that compaction, but then it can then slump back into place, and actually the bulk density values can be even higher. So again, I really emphasise prevention is better than cure. And if you do have to go in with subsoiler, just watch the timing of when that actually takes place.
Soil scientist Jane Rickson there with Peter McCann. This week, Peter also met Rodney Brown, the head of agribusiness in Northern Ireland at Danske Bank. He asked him how dairy farmers were doing in terms of repaying their debt and investing again.
I would say, Peter, that on milk farms at the moment, dairy prices have stayed strong. The returns into the industry have been strong, and farmers are in the position now, if they did take on debt during harder times, they're now starting to repay it very rapidly.
Mm-hmm. And are they coming back to you looking to invest in, like maybe catching up in 2 or 3 years where they probably didn't really have the money to invest in their business?
We have seen that, and we have been supporting that lately. We understand that cash flow was an issue during times whenever milk prices were low, and maybe the cash flow wasn't on farm to allow them to invest, and we are starting to see funding needs in terms of maybe more so back in the summertime, drainage and fencing, where they were carrying out 2-3 years work all in the 1 year, taking advantage of the good weather. Peter, as you know, many jobs were done on farm over the summer, and we have seen some funding needs for that, yes.
Last thing, Rodney, I suppose the uncertainty of Brexit and what way payments are going to go in that, no one really knows, and particularly definitely not farmers. So have you seen any change in farmers' appetites for coming to you looking for money for land, or is there still a keenness there to own land and push on, expand businesses?
There's still a keenness out there to own land, but we would see across the industry a level of cautiousness in terms of going forward, especially those that are more reliant on direct payments. Some of the incomes across the industry, direct payments are a support into them, but others, the direct payments are key to the survival of that industry. So yes, there are further developments in terms of lands. There's also further developments in terms of building sheds and trying to improve efficiencies within the farm. So yes, we have seen people come towards us looking for additional funding. Direct payments do come into it, but as you're quite aware, there is a soft landing period. They're not going to disappear tomorrow, so we would see that maybe some of the fund requirements have been drilled to more short-term rather than put on a long-term basis to enable any further advancements in the farm to be repaid within the scale of the transition period.
Yeah. Rodney Ryan, thanks for your time and all the best in your new role at the bank.
Thank you, Peter.
Finally, it wouldn't be a full week without a discussion on Brexit. The government has been holding forums for businesses around the country, and Irish Farmers Journal markets specialist Helen McEntee attended the one taking place in Monaghan. There, he met the local Sinn Féin MEP, Matt Carthy.
400 people here this morning, Matt. What does that tell us about the concern around Brexit in this area?
I think it tells you it's a very real concern. I think reports of people being tired or sickened of the Brexit debate are greatly exaggerated. It's quite clear that people who are involved in business, in the agri-food sector, in the community sector, in tourism sector, right across the board, I've seen people here from all walks of life in County Monaghan, and they have a real concern.
So we have the concern. Will Europe support Ireland if worst case scenario arises? You're a member of the European Parliament, you have the insight.
Yeah, and I'm going to Strasbourg next week. Absolutely, I think there is a greater understanding and awareness and a willingness to support Ireland at a European level than there is at a British level, for example. Having said that, I think we need to be realistic. The backstop as it currently stands in itself creates problems. It didn't include services, for example. It didn't include the rights of citizens in the north. So there's lots of questions. So what I hope to convey when I go back to Strasbourg next week is that the backstop must be the bottom line in terms of the negotiations. I think there's a willingness certainly on the part of European negotiators to support. We obviously have had the fear from the start that a last minute pressure may come on Ireland to step back. I think if we as Irish political voices and the Irish government remain united, then I do think that the EU will support us at that end.
That was Matt Carthy, member of the European Parliament. Phelim also spoke with Minister of State for European Affairs, Helen McEntee.
Brexit is a particularly serious interest, of course, to Irish agriculture in particular. All of industry, I know, gets impacted. Are you confident that the European Union will be full square behind Irish agriculture if the worst case scenario arises out of Brexit?
Absolutely, and I think what we've seen so far is absolute support and unity, not just among the 27 of which we are part of, but behind Ireland, behind the Irish issue, behind protecting the peace process and ensuring that we never return to a hard border. And we've already seen, unfortunately, how agriculture has been impacted, even with the change of sterling directly after the vote. A number of industries, in particular the mushroom industry, were particularly hard hit. So that's why we're trying to ensure that whatever deal we get, it not just impacts north and south, but also east and west, because we know a significant amount of trade.
Final point. You say we've got the support, morally we've got it in words. Will we get it in practical terms if it's really needed? Will they put money behind Irish farming if the worst happens with Brexit?
So what we're doing at the moment, and part of the work that I'm doing in Europe, is negotiating the new European budget. And what we have asked for, and we've been clear on, is that we need flexibility within the budget, that if any economic shock were to happen, if there are things coming down the line, and obviously Brexit is something that is in the back of our minds, that there would be flexibility within the budget to support either member states or industry.
There is a contingency for Brexit.
Well, what we're looking for is flexibility within the budget to deal with any serious crisis, and of course Brexit, absolutely, could count it as part of that.
Minister McEntee, thank you very much.
Thanks for listening, and of course you can read all about these stories and more in this week's Irish Farmers Journal in print, online and on our mobile app. The sound engineer this week was Ferdy Mooney, and I'm Thomas Hubert. Bye for now, and talk to you next week.
We hope you enjoyed this week's Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by MartBids. Download the MartBids app now and see what you're missing. The cattle aren't free, but the app is. MartBids. Trade safer. Trade smarter.